Hello and welcome to my channel, I Win to Lose Gaming. We've been barraged with a ton of new content with the release of Sumeru and Genshin Impact, and one of those new things happens to be the brand new 4-star character, Collei. In this video, we'll be taking a look at how interesting and unusual a Constellation 0 Collei is with some 4-star bows. So Collei is a really interesting character, and it's not just because she is the first 4-star dendro character in Genshin Impact, she's got a lot of additional weirdness to her kit. From weird basic attacks, to weird elemental skill mechanics, to weird ICDs, Collei has got it all. It took me more time than usual to wrap my head around how to use her. Regardless, hopefully this video will serve as an initial starting point for some of the things that Collei can do. Let's start off as we usually do with the primary build for this showcase. My Collei is primarily focused on being a sub-DPS dendro applier for this video. She has a healthy mix of crit stats and a healthy amount of energy recharge. For her weapon, she is using a Refinement 5 Sacrificial Bow, and for her artifacts, she is using the 4-piece Deepwood Memories. The 4-piece Deepwood Memories shreds dendro resistance by 30% after an elemental skill or burst hits the enemy. She is of course at Constellation 0, and her talents are at 6, 9, and 9. Keep in mind that this build is not focused on her personal damage, but instead is focused on having good burst uptime and applying dendro. Anyway, let's kick things off by demonstrating her kit against our Regisvine friend, starting with her normal attacks, Supplicant's Bowmanship. Unsurprisingly, her normal attacks are doing a paltry amount of damage, but what makes this even more tragic is that her third shot starts to whiff and hit the ground. Once she's a bit further away from her Regisvine friend, the third shot is unable to connect and just goes straight into the ground. Fortunately, her normal attacks are not an integral part of her kit. Next, we have her charge attacks. There is almost nothing remarkable about her charge attacks. They are just like most of the other bow characters in the game, where you charge for a couple of seconds and then unleash some minor elemental damage on your opponent. Similar to most other bow charge attacks, each fully charged shot also applies dendro. Let's move on to something much more interesting, her elemental skill. Collei's elemental skill, the Floral Brush, deals damage while moving forward and deals damage while moving back to Collei. It is a boomerang after all. Notably, it only deals damage once while moving forward and once while returning, doing a reasonable 514% damage multiplier at talent level 9 with both hits. She managed to crit for 7,745 damage. Collei's passive, Floral Sidewinder, also affects her elemental skill. While the boomerang is out, if a dendro-related reaction occurs, your character will be surrounded by this sprout. Collei herself can activate the sprout as well, as we can see in this clip where she activated it through burning. The sprout ticks twice, dealing some minor dendro damage, and the 2 ticks are quite delayed, generally occurring well after the boomerang has already returned. Lastly, we have her Elemental Burst, the adorably named Trump Card Kitty. Collei creates a small AoE where a bunch of bouncing, exploding kitties explode. By simply pressing Q with no elemental reactions, her burst has an initial strong hit followed up by 12 exploding kitties. Collei's second passive, the Languid Wood, extends the duration by up to 3 seconds. In this clip, by using Kokomi to trigger Bloom, Collei's burst went from 6 to 9 seconds in duration and ended up creating 18 total exploding kitties. Her burst also snapshots, as we can see here. After swapping Collei off, her exploding kitties are still doing 4,185 per exploded kitty after using Bennett's burst buff, of course. Now let's talk about a very important subject when it comes to Collei, her ICDs or internal cooldowns, aka how often she applies dendro. For these ICD tests, I used the Hunter's Path to bring her crit rate to over 100% so I could easily keep track of which hits activated spread. So don't focus on the damage numbers because they're obviously inflated with this 5-star weapon, but instead just focus on how often elemental reactions occur. Starting with her boomerang, it applies dendro on both hits, the hit moving out and the hit coming back. The subsequent sprout ticks twice, but only the first tick applies dendro. With her elemental skill, at Constellation 0, Collei can apply dendro up to 3 times with a single use of her elemental skill. Next is her elemental burst, which is where Collei's kit gets even weirder. I believe her burst can only apply dendro once every 3 or so seconds, regardless of how many times it hits the enemy. In this clip, we can see that the first hit of her burst applied quicken, then the 7th hit applied spread, and the 14th hit applied spread again. In this next clip, the same behavior is observed. In summary, her burst applies dendro 3 times if you extend its duration, and against an enemy sitting in it for the full duration. Once on the first hit, once on the 7th hit, and once on the 14th hit. Phew, we finally got through the nitty-gritty but extremely important parts of her kit. Let's see how Collei's full kit performs against our Regisvine friend. I've left Pyro on it so she can continuously activate burning to make her kit fully functional. While sporting a heavy support spec, and with just burning, Collei managed to do nearly 3/4 of the Regisvine's health, which is honestly quite reasonable for a non-DPS focused build. So now for the exciting and interesting part, actually using her in a team. I racked my brain for quite some time and experimented with many different compositions. Most of the comps I tried all just felt worse than replacing Collei with an Animo character or something like that. But I think I found a comp that actually utilizes her really well. This Burgeon comp. Collei's elemental mastery actually doesn't really matter. However, the Pyro teammate that activates Burgeon by blowing up the bloom, their elemental mastery is important. So meet Dragon's Bane Elemental Mastery Thoma. That's right, I never thought I'd be using such a ridiculous build. With this team, you can rather reliably have Thoma blow up the blooms for some reasonable AoE damage. As we can see, we opened up this fight against the Primogeo Vishap with 3 Burgeons, but only 2 of them did damage. This is because only 2 Burgeons can hit an enemy within a very small time window. By using Collei's front-loaded dendro application with her elemental skill, and then using auto attacks, Collei is able to activate Bloom with Xingqiu's water swords, and then blow them up with Thoma's shield's shockwave, consistently outputting 28,854 damage Burgeons. This is a completely new and refreshing way to play Genshin Impact. Bennett's massive healing and Thoma's shield also mitigate the self-inflicted damage from Burgeon as well, and the little bits of shield Thoma provides is enough for this team. As we can see, against these 2 world bosses, even against this angry green burb thing, which I believe heavily resists dendro, this team was able to surprisingly perform quite well. Who'd have thunk that a pure EM Thoma was going to be quite viable thanks to Collei. So beating up on pathetic world bosses is one thing, but can this team perform well in the hardest of all content in any video game ever made, Abyss 12? Let's go ahead and try it out. First of all, it's weirdly satisfying blowing up a bunch of enemies with this bizarre team. I mean, just look at this frame. That's a lot of damage, and mostly purely transformative reaction damage. There's something really cathartic with just pressing a couple auto attacks to create leafy explosions that actually do decent damage. Now, since I have Constellation 6 Bennett, I do try my best to avoid auto attack with Xingqiu or Bennett, as they can trigger Burgeon with their much lower elemental mastery. However, Collei being a bow user and Thoma being a polearm user are free to spam their normal attacks to activate Burgeon. This is a completely new style that I had not anticipated until racking my few brain cells left to find this comp. Now, I'm not all that comfortable with the cooldowns and rotation timings of this team yet, but I'm sure with more practice, that will become much more natural. This team does require good bloom management though, as I often found myself with way more than 2 blooms ready, and blowing up more than 2 blooms near an enemy is a waste of blooms. I can see this team rewarding mastering its rotations as well as mastering bloom management. 12-2-1 was surprisingly manageable as well. The single target power of this team is just fine, as Xingqiu, Collei, and Burgeon all do a reasonable amount of damage. While not able to single cycle the Cryocube, the fact that Dendro can actually be on the Cryocube allows for Bloom to then occur, which leads to, of course, Burgeon occurring. Burgeon is a surprisingly reliable and consistent source of 28,854 damage ticks with this team. After a quick second cycle, the Cryocube goes into panic mode and the rest is history. 1231 is complete mayhem. Dealing with the Mirror Maiden and her teleporting and her slowing water without any grouping is very annoying. It honestly feels like just a bunch of RNG as to what happened. Anyway, gripping footage of me being stuck in the corner between two very large men and one very tall woman aside, this team comfortably cleared the top half of Abyss 12, well under the recommended 9-star times. 1211 was completed in 59 seconds, 1221 in 47 seconds, and 1231 in 39 seconds. Alright, so this felt like probably my longest Constellation Zero showcase, and it was because I had a blast using this bizarre team that warranted lengthier explanations. Who would have thunk it'd be this satisfying and fun to play a Burgeon team with Toma and Collei? Collei is, I believe, uniquely suitable for this role in this team as she primarily focuses on attack percent and has front-loaded Dendro application with her boomerang. Because the actually damage portion comes from Burgeon, which uses the elemental mastery of the Pyro character blowing up the bloom, this makes Collei's elemental mastery not nearly as important as for a character like Tighnari as an example. Anyway, this is of course just one way and one composition to try Collei in. I'm sure many other variations with other Hydro and Pyro characters can work. And of course, other team archetypes like Hyper Bloom or even Quicken should be viable as well. Let me know what you think about our brand new 4-star Ranger in training and how you plan to use her. Also, I regularly make Genshin Impact videos ranging from Caesar showcases, DPS showdowns, guide videos, and more. So be sure to smash the subscribe button as it's the best and easiest way for you to support my work. Also, don't forget to like the video and leave a comment for the YouTube algorithm. As always, I appreciate every single one of you. This is I Want to Lose, signing out.